Okay, this is Nick Cap. This is Evolution of Animals. And typically in biology we talk about this as being what we call the march of the phyla. And so I want to go over all the different types of animals and kind of what they do relatively quickly. Again, there's lots of different organisms that are out there, and so this is looking at skull of what we think is an adult humanoid type individuals. And that could be a diseased Homo sapiens, but it may be a new type of Homo sapiens. We don't know. We're looking at the skeletons, not necessarily the DNA. All animal life began in what we call the Precambrian seas. We had something called the Cambrian explosion, which kind of resulted in all animals. What are animals? Animals are all eukaryotic. They have a nucleus and an internal membrane organelles. They are multicellular. They are heterotrophic organisms that obtain nutrients by ingestion, and they're able to digest their food within their own bodies. And so this is significant because, again, they can grab some food and then go to where it's safe. They don't have to stay out where it is, or they don't have to live inside their food like fungi do. Animals specifically lack the cell walls that provide the strong support for bodies of plants and fungi. So they're a little different. That is a snake eating a gazelle or something like that. Most animals, how they're different is they have muscle cells and nerve cells, which allows them to move. Most animals are diploid. That means they have two copies of the genetic information. They reproduce sexually, although not all of them do, and they proceed through a series of what we call similar developmental stages. And sometimes even a metamorphosis. And so again, what happens is that adults will produce a structure called an egg and a structure called a sperm, so the male and the female porch. We will have a fertilization event that looks a lot different from the adult here, and then that will go through a metamorphosis until it looks something a lot like an adult. And this is development. This early stage here basically is pretty consistent with all animals. And so again, we think animals developed from a clonal flagellated protist about 600 or 700 million years ago. And so again, if somebody tells you how the dinosaurs are a billion years old, and so basically something like this, which kind of looks like some of the development stuff that we see. And again, what we think happened is that it became specialized, and this is basically the outline of almost all animals, and it is the beginning of a structure that we see occurring in all animals as well. And so at the beginning of the Cambrian period, about 452 million years ago, animals underwent rapid diversification. In a span of about 15 million years, all major animal body plans today were evolved. And again, many of these animals are bizarre as what we've seen. Okay, so this is like a Tully monster. So we see some jellyfish. These guys here that look like walking sticks and trilobites, etc., are all kind of really kind of interesting fossils that are going on there. What ignited the Cambrian explosion is that we think it may be an increased complex predator-prey relationships again. And so again, the idea of that a cheetah gets faster than anything that can eat it. Well, okay, so a cheetah gets fast to catch its prey. The prey get faster, then a cheetah get faster, and it's this kind of arms race. And then also, what we also think may have happened is that the genes that control development of animal forms started to be able to change a lot easier, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We categorize animals by their body structure, and then also by looking at genetic information. And we'll look at that, but to the best of our knowledge, this is something that matches both body structure and genetic information. I'll have you look at it. And so what we're looking at here is kind of what are the major kind of issues that went around. So we had this ancestral protist that could maybe move a little bit. But basically what we see is then, in this beginning thing, is we have sponges, which don't have any true tissues. You can take a sponge and grate it through a sieve, and it will reformat. And so the sex cells can be almost anywhere inside of here. And then, there's really no kind of outside and inside to these guys. We have radial symmetry in cnidarians, and they have their gastrovascular cavity inside of them. With the advent of two tissues, we have specialization, and so we have the vertebrates here, and then we have the invertebrates over here, and we will kind of talk about all of these relatively quickly. And ideally, you should just be able to identify them and maybe talk a little bit about, what about them can we use? Again, when we talk about animals, we talk about this thing called radial symmetry and bilateral symmetry. In radial symmetry, kind of like a pod, you have many axi that you can use where you have symmetry in here. However, in bilateral symmetry, basically you have one plane, a left and a right, that would give you symmetry of this. Another thing that we've got to look at is that we have what's called a body cavity, which is a fluid-filled space that separates the digestive tract from the outer cell wall. And this is what we call a coelom, or it could also be called a pseudocoelom. And an organism like a planaria doesn't have a body cavity. So in order to digest and move stuff in its digestive tract, its body has to move. Whereas with a pseudocoelom and a coelom, true coelom, you're able to actually move these structures about. Again, what the true coelom is that this cavity is located within that mesoderm tissue. And so here we have the ectoderm, mesoderm, and the endoderm with all these different colors in here, right? So we see all of those are similar body plans to one another. The invertebrates make up about 95% of the animal kingdom. Sponges represent multiple phyla. This is basically the structure of the sponge, and so it's a hollow wall. We have these, basically these cells, the kyanite, the feeding cells, these cells, which actually propel the water. So the kyanocyte, which actually kind of forces water, so water comes in the pores and the water shoots out the top of these guys, and then as that's going, you're able to feed off of these things. So it's basically making their own particular structures. Now, cnidarians are a little bit different in that they have a gastrovascular cavity. They have these stinging cells, they take in the material, and so here's the polyp form and the medusa form. Very beautiful structures in here. A lot of these are used by different organisms, and it's actually some of the colors we use here for cloning purposes. Okay, the stinging cells actually go in and get prey. Supposedly one of the most painful things in the world is to have the sting of the box jellyfish. Mollusks, Phyla mollusca, are soft-bodied animals that are protected by a hard shell. They may have a structure called a radula that helps them kind of scrape up food. They kind of scrape stuff up as they walk about. They have a foot that helps them with movement, the visceral mass that houses the internal organs, and then a mantle which secretes the cell when it's present. So, it kind of looks a lot like this. So here's the mouth. Kind of an interesting organism that we have. The gastropods have a single cell, and sometimes we have things like a slug that have lost their cells. The bivalves and cephalopods are really interesting because they're relatively fast, and they can communicate, and they tend to be really smart. Okay. Flatworms, Pelheminthes, and liver flukes, etc., have gastrovascular cavities. This is the Pelheminthes. These are all the structures that they have there. Annelids have body segmentation. They have a coelom. They have a digestive tract with two openings, and that allows for specialization of the digestive tract. And so here are the annelids here, and the annelids also have segmentation on them as well. And so the three main groups of annelids are the earthworms, the polychaetes, and then the leeches. that we see here. And I'm not going to get that big into this. The roundworms, phylum Nematoda, are cylindrical in shape. They're tapered at both ends. They have more diverse and widespread of all animals. And the roundworms are also called nematodes. They're important decomposers. They're dangerous parasites in plants, humans, and other animals. And the C. elegans that we use in laboratory are examples of these guys. The arthropoda are named for the jointed appendages. There's about 1 million arthropod species. Arthropods are really gross. There's 4 main group of arthropods: the arachnids, the spiders, crustaceans, millipedes and centipedes, and then lastly the insects. The arthropods are segmented animals with specialized segments. Provides protection. So this is what the arthropods are. We can look at the structures, but basically they have this exoskeleton. They have a set of legs and a set of sensory. The arachnids live on land. Usually have 4 pairs of walking legs, include spiders, scorpions, ticks, and mites. Those are the structures. Crustaceans are nearly all aquatic. They have multiple pairs of specialized appendages: lobsters, crayfish, etc. Millipedes and centipedes. So here's the millipedes have a pair of legs. So if you look at these appendages, what's really kind of interesting, genetically, we have all these appendages, and there's a pattern that will go on there. Insects have a 3-part body: head, thorax, and abdomen. The insect type usually bears sensory antenna, parentenna. Mouthparts are adapted to particular kind of evening. Flight is one of the greatest success to insects. And so here's a typical insect body, and we can take a look at that. Insects live in almost every terrestrial habitat, freshwater, and in the air. Oddly enough, they are not in the oceans. None of these are oceans. Insects can undergo a metamorphosis during their development, and so here is the butterfly, the monarch butterfly, that are in this area here. Echinoderms have an exoskeleton vascular system. They are very tasty, and so these include the urchins, the sand dollar, sea cucumbers. Here's a bunch of sea stars on the water, and you take a look at it. It's kind of interesting how they go. These guys here are really good at eating in bivalves. They have this tube feed system where they can kind of pull the bivalves apart. Vertebrates have unique exoskeletons, consist of a cranium and skull and a backbone made in a series. And so here's the cranium, and then here's the vertebrae. And so this is a snake, and so we're looking at all those different vertebrae. What we're looking at here is a dorsal hollow notochord-pharyngeal slits and a post-anal tail. So here's the anus, and then the tail extends past that that we see. This is the body plan of all vertebrates. And at one time in their life, they have all of these structures. The chordates consist of 3 groups of invertebrates. All other chordovertebrates are vertebrates. And so lancet tunicates and hag fishes don't necessarily have a backbone all the time. But what they do is they do have a portion of their lives where they do have a backbone. And so again, let's look at this. So what we're looking at is these kind of early months. So what we're doing is, when we're looking at this evolution, we're looking at kind of how the new things that are added. Okay, from the tunicates, lancets, hadspids. So again, these are all chordates. These are the vertebrates, starting with latiges and mammals, and we'll kind of go on there. And so the vertebrates are aquatic and probably evolved during the early Cambrian period, about 542 million years ago. They lack jaws. They are represented today by hagfishes. This is the hagfish that we have here. His claim to fame is that they produce lots and lots of slime that we're seeing that may have some good capabilities. Cartilaginous fishes are basically sharks, and so they don't necessarily have bonefish. The bony fishes include the rayfin fish and lobefin fish, and so here we have the operculum, which surrounds the gills, and a lateral line that we have here, and so those are all a big family. Again, the cartilaginous fishes and bony fishes both have a lateral line system that detects minor vibrations in the water. To provide lift off the bottom, cartilaginous fishes must swim, but bony fish actually have swim bladders that they can fill with air, and they can neutralize their buoyancy. The next adaptation that we'd see is for going into land was basically amphibians. typically what they do is they reproduce in water and they go through a metamorphosis from a larva to an adult form. And so here's a tadpole and here's the frog. This part lives in water. This part here can live without the presence of water. And again, if we look at some of those, there's other main groups of amphibians. Again, amphibians descend from fishes and had lungs, and with fishes that had lungs and fins and muscles. And so we had something kind of a lot like this. And so that those early amphibian fish have been kind of they've looked for those fossils and they have found those fossils. Basically, we call these tetrapods, and they all developed from those kind of same amphibs. These tetrapods include amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. The reptiles had an upgrade in that they have the amniotic egg that allows them to kind of move away from water because they bring the water with them. Reptiles include snakes, lizards, turtles, crocodiles, alligators, and birds. Yes, I said birds. Reptile adaptations to living on land include the amniotic egg and the sealed waterproof skin. Here are some of those structures that we see here. Dinosaurs. The non-bird reptiles are ectotherms. That's sometimes referred to cold-blooded, which means they get their body from the environment. All non-bird reptiles can survive less than 10% of the calories required by a bird or mammal. Again, they don't need to do that. The reptiles diversified extensively a while ago. Dinosaurs were the largest animals to live on land. Recent evidence shows that birds evolved from a lineage of small two-legged dinosaurs during the Great Reptilian Radiation. Birds have many adaptations that make them lighter for flight. We'll talk about that, but basically they're endotherms. Mammals, the first true mammal developed about 200 million years ago during the time of the dinosaurs. Okay, they were there. There weren't humans there in the dinosaurs, but there were mammals. Mammals' hallmarks are hair and mammary glands that produce milk. We have monotremes, which are egg-laying mammals. We have marsupials, which have a placenta, but they do have a pouch, so they would spend a relatively short amount of time in the placenta, and then they come out and they attach to a teat. And Atherians are true placental mammals, in that they are born basically live and ready to go. Humans are parts of the primates, which are a mammalian group, and this is the group that we have here. But our closest ancestors are the chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutan. Primates evolved from insect-eating mammals. They have limber shoulder joints that can move the shoulder around. They have eyes in front of their face. They have excellent hand-eye coordination, extensive parental care. Primates are three main groups that we see. I'm not going to really kind of get into that. But here's our group that we have here in humans that we have here. So again, we are the I guess in ape-like structures. Human beings and chimpanzees shared a common ancestor about 5 to 7 million years ago. We represent two divergent branches of the anthropoid tree. It's more multi-branched. There's lots of humanoid. Basically, there's only one. We did art, and the main thing that we can have is we can defy our physical limitations. We can shortcut biological evolution. We can change the environment to kind of meet our particular needs. FOXP2 is a gene that is responsible for our being able to talk. There are other anthropoids that actually have FOXP2. Sadly, they don't have it. And so what we want to do is have a rough idea of how this graph would go. Look at these particular guys, know what a notochord is, and bivalves are the